Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of the First Serve podcast, where today we'll be discussing everything from the very strange 2020 tennis season, starting with last week's incredible ATP Finals tournaments. And I suppose the best place to start, Ewan, is probably with that incredible final. Was it 2 hours, 43 minutes long, the longest final in history, between Medvedev and Dominic Thiem?
Yeah, it was an incredible final. I think definitely one of the best finals we've had since the tournament moved to London in 2009, and it was definitely a fitting way to finish the final year in London, as sad as it was, without fans being there for the last edition. But I think it's been, the O2 Arena has been such a great home for the event for the past 11 years, and yeah, it was one of the best finals I've watched, probably along with the final last year between Thiem and Tsitsipas. I think they were probably the two best finals in London, and I definitely can't argue that Medvedev, with the fact that Medvedev deserved to win it. I mean, winning all 5 matches, he was unbelievable, and finishing the year on I think a 10-match winning streak, or possibly 11, including winning the Paris Masters. It was it was brilliant.
Yeah, and like you say, Medvedev a deserved winner. I don't think anyone can argue with that, based on the final and based on the tournament before that. Like you say, when only player to go, well, obviously if he won the final, he's the only player to go unbeaten. But yeah, going unbeaten in the group, quite astonishing as well. What would you say was the difference on the day in the final?
Well, it was a really interesting match because Thiem definitely had the better of it for the first set and most of the second set, in a way similar to the semi-final between Nadal against Medvedev. But I think the key for Thiem was he was, in the first set, he was getting a very high percentage of first serve returns back in play, and in the second set it continued, but the number dropped as the match went on. I think Medvedev's serve improved, and also just the variety of tactics from Medvedev was a big factor. He started to serve and volley on big points. He started to really go after the second serve, and like he did against Nadal in the semi-final, he looked to take advantage of Thiem's slice backhand and come to the net off the floated balls to finish points. So I think it's that variety from Medvedev, as much as you think of him as a consistent player who's based on solidity from the baseline and speed. He has the ability to change a match sort of when it is going against him, and I think Thiem did also tire in the third set. I think he was definitely fatigued, probably from the long matches he played against Djokovic, and Nadal in the group stage took a lot out of him.
Yeah, and I think it's something that was touched on a lot in the commentary as well, the way that Medvedev, he works out matches, he feels matches, and he makes solutions during matches. He doesn't go in with a predetermined tactic. He's very good when things are going wrong to kind of fix it, see what the solution is, and implement it. But like you say, I'd have probably associated Medvedev with solid baseline play until this year, but this year especially, he's looked to come in and volley a lot more and really take the initiative, and he's so much more than just a baseline defender now. I think he's been playing some doubles in a few smaller tournaments, hasn't he? And do you think that may have played a part in the improvement in his volley game?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely played a role. I think you've seen with a lot of the young guys, when they've played more doubles, it definitely improves the number of skills, but definitely volleys, the ability to come forward and finish points, which is huge, particularly on an indoor hard court, and also returns, when generally Medvedev's return position, his normal return position is deep behind the baseline, but he does have the ability to step in and take the ball earlier, particularly against the second serve, and be more aggressive, and that's possibly something that doubles has helped with as well.
Yeah, and just a little bit on Dominic Thiem, to have missed out in the final for the second year running. I think you could maybe, even though Medvedev's gone unbeaten, I mean, he's probably the best player in the tournament, you couldn't have really argued if Dominic Thiem won the tournament as well, with the level he provided in some of his matches. Do you think it will come around for him eventually in this tournament? It's moving away from London next year, but it'll be an ATP Finals champion at some point, won't it?
Yeah, I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if he doesn't win it. Definitely. I mean, yeah, he's definitely unfortunate to lose in the final, another tight 3-set final for the second year running, especially after he's beaten Nadal and Djokovic in the tournament, and he doesn't win the tournament. I mean, I don't know how many times that happens, especially with the level of tennis he produced in those two matches. It's not like he beat a depleted Nadal and Djokovic. They were both at a pretty high level, and I mean, yeah, team was unfortunate. I think possibly just a combination of the brilliance of Medvedev and fatigue catching up with him towards the end of the final. But yeah, I think he'll definitely win this title because he's just only improving and going from strength to strength on hard courts.
Yeah. And you've mentioned team beating both Nadal and Djokovic, and another person who did that was the eventual champion, Daniil Medvedev. Right. I think we've got to be careful when approaching this particular subject, because so many times before the the younger lads have won big tournaments and people are starting to suggest maybe they've finally reached the level where they can challenge the big three. But do you think maybe they are, that time has finally come, or do you think we can't read too much into this? There has been surprise winners of this tournament in the past.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has. Sort of from the year where Dimitrov won it in 2017, that the theme kind of followed the next 2 years, with Dimitrov went on to have a disappointing year after he was expected he could really challenge at the slams, and similar, not to quite the same extent, but then Zverev, after winning in 2018, didn't go on to have the year that he was expected, and to a lesser extent the same after winning it last year. He had a decent year this year, but probably not quite. Obviously, it's hard to criticize someone for this year given how much of the calendar was taken out, but it was the same. So it is hard to read into this, winning this tournament. But I think the level Medvedev produced, the fact he did it with a clean sweep, and the opposition he was up against, it wasn't a depleted draw, barring the absence of Federer. And I think Medvedev is definitely a genuine contender on slams, and team obviously he's already won one, but I think Medvedev's got a good chance next year, definitely at the hard court Grand Slams.
Yeah, and just a bit more on the ATP Finals, the tournament in general this year. Obviously, we've already touched upon the fact it's the last time in London, but it was a really, really good send-off of the tournament in London, wasn't it? The level throughout the week was incredible. The matches I'm thinking of in particular was that Nadal team match, where I think that was the first. There'd been good matches before that, but that was the first match where I'm like, wow, this is really going to be a good week of tennis. And then the two semi-finals were brilliant as well. What were your thoughts on the whole tournament?
Yeah. Definitely. I thought it was an outstanding tournament. That since I've watched the event fully, since I've followed it, sort of following every match at the end of the year. I think the first time I did that was probably 2015, and I think it was probably the highest quality event in terms of from start to finish that I've watched. There was quality group stage matches. I mean, you're always going to get a couple of disappointing matches in the group if you get a dead rubber, and there was one or two, but generally, I mean, the quality of the Nadal team match for a 2-set match, which lasted almost 2.5 hours, was outstanding. The Nadal against Tsitsipas was a great match. Team against Tsitsipas, even Djokovic against Medvedev, which was a bit shorter, was still a very high level of tennis. And then you couldn't have had 3 better matches in the knockout stages for the semi-finals and the final. I don't think there's ever been a tournament, at least at the ATP Finals in London, where you've had 3 better matches than that in the knockout stages.
Yeah. We're going to go on to discuss this more when we come towards the review of the 2020 tennis season. But I just wanted to touch on this now as well. Novak Djokovic, he's ended the year as year-end number 1. He got his trophy at the start of the tournament to signify that achievement. And on the whole, probably a very good year for him, considering everything that's happened. But also, would you say in the way his season has ended, from maybe that disappointment of being defaulted at the US Open onwards, he might actually come away feeling quite disappointed with the season?
Yeah, I think he will be disappointed, even though, like you say, it was still by many standards a brilliant season, but it wasn't the season that I think he would have wanted at the start of the year. And I think at the start of the year, he would have been looking at a good season, would have been winning 2 Grand Slams. And okay, you lost Wimbledon, which is a Grand Slam. He's usually the favorite to win, and you feel he probably would have won. So that's out of his hands. But yeah, the US Open default, whatever way you look at it, of course, it was extremely unfortunate, but it was his fault. So he has cost himself a great opportunity there to win a Grand Slam. And at the French Open, there wasn't anything he could do to answer Nadal's brilliance. So I think to win one Grand Slam and to win both the Masters 1000 events he entered, there was only 3 held, and he didn't enter Paris. So I think it was still a good year. But on the whole, had he finished it by winning the ATP Finals, I think you would have said he would have been satisfied. But I would say he would be slightly disappointed in the end.
Well, what I think it was at the height of kind of the lockdown, when he'd had that situation with the tournament he held, the Adria Tour, and Nick Kyrgios was calling him out on it a lot. Nick Kyrgios, the voice of reason for once. What he was saying was that Djokovic has been the best tennis player, and he may well go the year unbeaten, but he's let himself down there. So I was really picking up on that. Kyrgios, who was actually critical of Djokovic at the time based on his tennis was saying that Djokovic might go 2020 unbeaten. So do you think was ever really a chance of that, or do you think just Roland Garros alone makes that really difficult?
Yeah, I think that is the factor that makes it really difficult. But I think there was an outside chance if he had won the US Open. You do wonder if the default hadn't happened, he'd come through that match. You'd expect him to at least go through the final where he would play team, and you'd make him favourite to win that. I think it would have been a great match, but there's a good case that he could have won that tournament. He could have then still won Rome as he did. And if he goes into Roland Garros with that momentum, with that almost air of invincibility, you wonder if it would have been if it could have been a different final. But I still think with the form Nadal was in, it probably would have ended there. And I think he still finished the year with a good record. But yeah, from the position he was in, I think it was definitely there was a few more losses than it looked like there was going to be.
Yeah, and Rafael Nadal, I just wanted to touch on him for a second as well, because do you feel like he's missed out on his best chance to finally get his hands on the ATP Finals this year?
Yeah, I think it was a great chance, probably the best chance he's had to win it, possibly since 2013 when he reached the final and lost to Djokovic. That year he was going in great form, having won the US Open. This is probably the best he's been in terms of the combination of fitness, given the lack of tennis we played this year, particularly on hard course. That's always a bonus for Nadal to have not played sort of a full season of hardcore tennis, that's one of the reasons he's usually depleted by the time we get to the indoor hard season, which is also a service he struggles on. And also you had probably a below par Djokovic, who's always and Federer missing from the draw, who are the two players who've usually stopped him in London, even when he has been in good shape physically and in terms of his game. So I think it is he'll be disappointed to have not beaten Medvedev, having served for the match and going to a tiebreak as well in the second set. I think he'll definitely view it as a big chance missed.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that actually, because I think he's aiming to become, and he doesn't, he's not like Djokovic. He won't come out and openly admit that he's motivated by records, but I do think he's definitely motivated by records, and he'd be the first player to win every big title, including the Olympic gold, since Andre Agassi, is it? Or the only player to do it?
Andre Agassi, yeah.
There's a lot of speculation as to why Nadal doesn't, hasn't won this tournament before, and it does often revolve around two things: the fitness, like you've picked up on. He plays at an incredible intensity all year round. People talk about how he trains at almost the same intensity as he plays, and just come the end of the season, he's taken a lot out on him. Another thing is also that maybe he's not the best player on the tour indoors, but do you feel like that factor is, it's less of a problem at the moment? He's actually playing really well indoors.
I think it's as well as I've seen him play indoors for a long time. But I do think that the fitness factor and injuries from repetitive, intense play on hard course, which does happen post Wimbledon every year. So if he plays post Wimbledon every year, at least one Hardcourt Masters 1000, either Canada or Cincinnati, then the US Open, then the Asian Swing, then Paris. So with that, or usually in case he's not going to be 100%, but I think also his game style, even when he's at his best, we've seen that even at his best, sometimes it just isn't enough on indoor hard course if he runs into a team at his best or a Medvedev at his best, or possibly if he'd faced Djokovic, given his record against Djokovic on hard course since 2013. I think it would still have been tough for Nadal, but if he plays a reduced calendar next season, I still think he's got an opportunity to win the event again. But this was the best one he's had, one of the best opportunities he's had in his career.
Yeah, and as talk on this tournament has really focused around the four players, the four semi-finalists, as it turns out. The two of the big three that was there, and the two finalists in the end. But there was four other players at the tournament in the group stage as well, and a few players that may have had a chance of being in the tournament but have missed out. So just what are your thoughts on kind of the other guys? Schwartzman, who else was there? Zverev, obviously.
Zverev, Rublev.
Rublev. Yeah. Do you see them having good seasons next year, or do you think they're kind of less complete to compete with Djokovic and Nadal and Federer as team and Medvedev are?
Yeah, well, I do see it a bit at the moment as like a top four of Nadal, Djokovic, Medvedev, and team, and then Federer is a bit of an unknown quantity given how long he's been out with injury. He's going to be coming back. Obviously, at his age, it's hard to know what to expect because he's come back before from a long injury layoff and had an incredible resurgence in 2017 and went on to have two really strong seasons there. So yeah, I do think there's probably Federer is a bit of an unknown, and yeah, I think Tsitsipas, Zverev, and Rublev are all a slight level below, even though it maybe seems harsh on Zverev considering how close he came to winning a Grand Slam. But yeah, it's just the inconsistency. And Tsitsipas and Rublev have had, particularly Rublev's had a brilliant year, improved a lot. But I think there's still a way to go probably for that group to sort of be on the same level as the group above. And Schwartzman had a great season, but I would be surprised if he qualified for the ATP Finals again. If we have a fuller calendar, I think he absolutely deserved to be there. And yeah, he was outstanding in Rome and at Roland Garros, but I think it's probably unlikely he'll make it to the finals again. And yeah, similar case to Nadal in a way. It's not an ideal service for Schwartzman, especially with the group he was drawn in. All the players he was up against, Djokovic, Medvedev, and Zverev. It was really tough. They're all really tough matchups for him in those conditions. So I think it was a disappointing tournament for him, but I don't know if he could have expected too much more.
And yeah, just looking at some of the guys who didn't make it, but are near those top 8 spots, certainly near those top 10 spots in the rankings. I wanted to touch on Matteo Berrettini actually, because he's actually had a bad season, and I think the reason he's still only high in the rankings is due to the changes that was made into the rankings calculation because to factor in the COVID pandemic. But he did have a disappointing season, but there is genuine talent there, isn't there, in Berrettini?
Oh, there is definitely. Yeah, he just didn't quite back up the fantastic breakthrough. Yeah, he'd had last season, but I still think he's got a lot of room to improve, which is a positive. It was a tough year for him, and yeah, it's hard to know what impact the disruption of the season had on him. It probably did have a big impact. And also where he was so successful at the US Open last year, obviously the change of courts this year it's hard to know how that impacted him. Where he made the semi-finals last year, the courts were sped up a lot and not quite as high bouncing, so it was hard to back up that fantastic result he had at the US Open. But I still think with a fuller season hopefully next year, Berrettini could maintain his place in the top 10 where he might not have been if the ranking changes hadn't been brought in.
I've also got the name of 3 Canadians noted down. Shapovalov, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and also he's not part of this group because he's not one of the younger guys, but he's certainly not old. Milos Raonic started to look good towards the end of the year. Could you see them having a good year next year?
Yeah, I could definitely. I mean, firstly on Raonic, I think Raonic looked really good straight all the way from the Cincinnati event, which was held in New York, where he obviously got the final and could have won against Djokovic. He didn't quite back up with a great US Open, but yeah, then he went to the Paris semi-finals as well. Raonic was really impressive. I think Raonic will do that if he can stay fit. That's always the problem. He seems to have a good run, and then he's just derailed by an injury. It sets him back, and he has to start all over again. But yeah, if he can just stay fit next season, I think Raonic is definitely a player who could get back into the top 10. And as far as the other two, I think they've both shown some great signs, especially Shapovalov at the US Open, again at the quarterfinals. I think Felix reached the fourth round. He had a couple of great wins, and he was well beaten by Thiem in the end. But the positive runs for them both at Grand Slam. I think they've still got a lot of improvements to make in terms of shot selection, in terms of there's still areas they need to improve to really catch up with the likes of Tsitsipas, Zverev, and Rublev, who we talked about. They were the group below the top guys. I think these guys are probably the next group down out of the next gen, but I think massive potential, and it's just going to take them a bit of time.
Yeah, and just finally, before we start to move on to his review of the whole season, I wanted to touch on someone who we have already talked a lot about in this podcast, who you mentioned as part of your current Big Four, plus the unknown one in Federer, Dominic Thiem. Obviously, I feel like we associate him a lot more with the next gen, just because his breakthroughs only been in the last few years. But he's actually almost as close in age to Djokovic as he is to the next gen. So just, if you do think maybe his time is now to really go out, and I mean, he's won a Grand Slam this year, whether you think there's an asterisk to it or not, he has won a Grand Slam this year. But how long can his time be? Do you think he can go on to be towards the top of tennis for another 10 years up till he's 37, or do you think maybe he's got 5 years of picking up a good amount of slams, and then he might start to decline, because he does play at an incredible intensity and works extremely hard as well?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point about his physical playing style. It's hard to know how long he's going to be at the top level in terms of competing for Grand Slams, because the only player we've really seen do it into the late 30s is Federer, who is, it seems, Federer is a phenomenon. He is a bit of an outlier in that sense. We don't know whether, obviously, Nadal and Djokovic might prove that they can do that as well in the next few years. But I think with Thiem, he's in his prime now, definitely. And yeah, like you say, it does feel like he's associated with the younger guys, but he's been around for such a long time on tour. He has a great amount of experience, but he's improved so much in the last couple of years. I think this is his time now, and he could really be the guy who, if Nadal and Djokovic drop off in any way, he could be the next number one, I would say. And I think he's got at least, I'll be surprised if he doesn't have at least a good 4 or 5 years still in the top 5 or thereabouts.
And just a final one on your Big Four at the moment. Obviously, the rankings would say Thiem above Medvedev, but do you definitely see it that way as well? I mean, I don't want you to sit on the fence here. If you had to say who's more complete at the moment, would you say Dominic Thiem or Danny Medvedev?
I would still say Thiem, even though Medvedev has just been in the final and won Paris. On form, Medvedev, he has been the better player, but I would still give Thiem the slight edge for a season as a whole, and for what, for the level he's at. He lost that match, but he was extremely close, and I would still have Thiem at number 3.
Yeah. So now we'll move on to as review of the 2020 tennis season, a difficult tennis season to review because there was a big chunk of it missing. What were your thoughts on the season? We'll start with who have been your standout players.
Standout players. Yeah, well, I think I would still, despite what we discussed earlier about Djokovic, I would probably still give the player of the year to Djokovic. So I would have, the 3 Grand Slam winners, Djokovic, Nadal, and Thiem obviously stand out. Medvedev for the way he finished the season and won the 2 huge events indoors. And also Rublev definitely deserves a massive mention for winning 5 titles and having an unbelievable season where he's improved a lot and to qualify for London. he had a good year last year, but I mean, vast improvement from him. And also, I think Zverev, although despite the inconsistencies, I mean, to reach a Grand Slam final and serve for the match, also to win 2 titles, made the final of the Paris Masters. I think Zverev did have a good year as well. So they would be my standout players at the top players.
Yeah, and you've touched a bit on Rublev's improvement there. Would you have him down as your most improved player of the season, or is there someone else who you'd like to highlight in that regard?
No, I would have Rublev, definitely. I think, yeah, to win 5 titles, all at ATP 500 and 250 level, but still the quality of tennis he produced. And also, he didn't have the big breakthrough at a huge event, but still consistent results at the slams. You 4th round at the Australian Open, quarterfinals at the US Open and the French, still solid results. And yeah, I would have to give Rublev most improved player.
Yeah, and you know, if you talk about watchable players as well, I think you definitely have Rublev down as a player. But I think a lot of people who aren't massive tennis fans, if they sat and watched a match of his, would say, you know, oh, this is really exciting because he does have quite a distinct style of trying to just smash the ball as hard as he can, but keep it play.
Yeah, he's really entertaining to watch. The way he destroys the ball. I mean, and yeah, you can see his emotion as well. He really does wear his heart on his sleeve, and particularly the US Open match against Medvedev, where at the end of the first set, I think where he blew a few set points, he clearly finds it frustrating to play Medvedev, and you saw he's furious at the end of that. But I think he's a great character as well. And yeah, I think he's going to continue to improve.
Yeah, I think personally another note on that I have of Rublev is he did have quite a big breakout when he was quite a lot younger as well, and then it got disrupted by injuries, didn't it? And then he's come back and started playing really well and got himself up those rankings again. So really impressed with him, especially this year. Just another thing, this is probably going to go down a similar route to most improved player, but maybe kind of a surprise package, someone who you think's done well that you didn't really have down as someone who'd go far in tournaments at the start of the year.
Yeah, I would say one that comes to mind. It's possibly a bit of a strange one, but Carreño Busta slightly surprised me with his form after the lockdown. I mean, I know he has reached the semi-finals of the US Open before in 2017, but it was, not to take anything away from the achievement, it was a wide open draw when you did it that time, and it was fairly open this time. But he's certainly not someone I would have picked to get to the semi-finals of that particular slam, especially on the quicker courts that were brought in this year. And he was a surprise, and he went, I think, quarterfinals in Paris at the end of the year as well, and he wasn't actually far away from the top 8 at the end of the year. So I would say he slightly surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's been your single match of the year? I know it's probably quite a hard one, although less matches to choose from than usual, so it might actually be quite easy to pick.
Yeah. In terms of drama, I think it would have to be, in terms of drama, the US Open final. In terms of quality of tennis, I mean, it was only a 2-set match, but the Team Nadal match of the ATP Finals, I think, I can't think of probably a higher quality match that we saw this year than that one. I don't know if there's any recency bias there because we've just watched it a few days ago, but I really do think that's definitely the highest quality best of 3 match. I don't know if I'm missing any better match at a Grand Slam here, but that's definitely the one.
For me, I think what's standing out in my mind, and it doesn't feel like it was this year because it's so long ago, but the Australian Open final. That obviously came down to 5 sets. I mean, that's another thing with Dominic Thiem. He mentioned, I think it was after his semi-final against Djokovic, how he thought that after winning a Grand Slam, he wouldn't have kind of the mental battle he was facing on big points against big players. He didn't think that'd be as big of a problem. And maybe you'd look at your Australian Open final as an example of that when he's 2 sets up and he's ended up losing in 5. But obviously he did almost end up choking a little bit in that Djokovic match. So quite an interesting one from him. I do feel like he's a lot mentally stronger now, and maybe the Australian Open final did play a part in his improvement in that respect. Because whatever you want to say about Djokovic being someone who can change a game, work out what's going wrong, kind of similar to Medvedev. In fact, the master of it ahead of Medvedev. Dominic Thiem was well on top in that Australian Open final to begin with, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, you are absolutely right with that match. That was right up there. It was a brilliant. It was a brilliant match, and there was swings of momentum. And yeah, you're right. Thiem did seem to have the match in control at 2-1 up, and Djokovic seemed to be struggling with an injury. Whether or not, whatever people, the opinion of people is on that, we have seen him do that before, and he did leave the court and come back looking a different player. He was brilliant in the fourth and fifth sets, Djokovic. But I remember, I think he saved a couple of break points with 7 volley. The Thiem definitely, it does feel like it slipped away from Thiem, and his level dropped as he got close to the finish line. But yeah, as you say, I think he definitely did learn from that. Yeah. That match is up there. I'd probably give an honourable mention as well, which is just come to mind. Thiem against Schwartzman at the French Open in the quarterfinals. It had a bit of a flat fifth set, as I think Thiem had physically hit a brick wall. But I mean, the first 4 sets, it was just an incredible, high quality, brutal physical contest. Yeah, that was outstanding by Schwartzman.
Yeah. I've just realised I've been throwing these questions to you without answering them myself. So I'm just going to quickly say, my player of the year, I think you can't look beyond Djokovic, as much as I'm tempted by Thiem and Medvedev for them, surprising me. Thiem picking up his first Grand Slam, having that final in Australia. I do think you can't look beyond Djokovic for player of the season. My surprise package, I think I'm actually going to give it to Raonic, because I thought it was done, I thought and then he's obviously had a fantastic run in the Masters towards the end of this year. So I'm encouraged to see what he manages to produce next season, because he's a Grand Slam finalist, and he was a player that had a lot of promise around him at one point. Best match, it's once again, I'm not sure it's recency bias, but I do really agree with you in terms of the Nadal Thiem match at the ATP Finals. I think the level on display there was just fantastic. I mean, it was 2 players really going out to attack and win that match. And also, I think as far as Grand Slam final 5-setters go, I'd probably lean more towards the Australian Open than the US Open. So.
Oh yeah, I agree that it was definitely a higher quality match. Yeah, no question.
Also another thing this season, it's a year where we haven't had a grass season except from a couple of exhibition tournaments, which Thiem in fact won one of those. He called it his second grass court title, but I don't think he can claim that from an exhibition tournament.
Yeah.
How much have you missed the tennis on the grass this year?
Oh yeah, it's definitely been a big miss. I mean, it's such a, even in a normal season, it's a short part of the season, so it's always something you look forward to. It's such a unique surface with so much history. It's always brilliant when the grass season comes around, especially to see the 500 events in Halle and Queens, and then obviously Wimbledon's was the biggest disappointment of the year that we didn't have Wimbledon. So hopefully we're going to get a grass court season next year, and it'll be really interesting to see Thiem on grass, to see if he's carried over the improvements he's made on fast courts, particularly hard courts, over the grass.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got this down as a discussion point, but I saw something on Twitter the other day, and I'm just completely nicking it here, but someone posed the question of, if you was made the CEO of World Tennis, which isn't an organisation, there isn't one organisation that oversees everything in tennis across the world, but if that was a thing and you was the CEO of World Tennis for 5 minutes and you could make one irreversible decision, they asked what would you do, and a lot of people said a grass court Masters and extend the grass season. Would you agree with that, or do you think it's kind of...
Sorry. I would agree with that. That is, like, when you were asking that, I was actually thinking of that. I've thought with the 9 Masters 1000s, I think there is a good balance between the ones that you've got now, 6 on hard, 3 on clay. Probably you could argue maybe there could be another clay one in there, but in terms of, I think, why not add a 10th? Why not have a grass court Masters 1000? It is one of the 3 services, and if the grass court season can be made slightly longer as well, I would like to see that. But yeah, I would definitely like to see, I don't know whether it would be Queens or Halle, but both events I think would be capable of being a Masters 1000 event, and I think it'd be great to see because it is one of the 3 services. It should have a Masters 1000 event.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to say on the end of that was actually, and I was going to pose this idea to you just in case you held this horrible opinion yourself, but I can see with your answer that you don't. Someone actually responded to one of those, had a grass court Masters tweets with, it's just the evolution of tennis. It's moving away from grass and then just boring surface is what they said. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. I think you've got to have a variety between services. I don't know where they're coming from with that is when they're saying that grass court tennis could be boring in the past. I don't know, but that was quite a long time ago. I said that was when people said that was kind of in the late 90s, into the 2000s, maybe where it was very dominated by Sampras, and there was a lot of matches between the likes of Sampras, Ivanisevic, Krajicek, a lot of dominant servers with very few breaks of serve, which is entertaining to watch in its own right, but not every year necessarily. And I think the grass courts have been slowed down a lot for that reason. And I think you do get entertaining tennis on grass now.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like motivated by the fact that on grass is still where you see kind of your players like John Isner going far in tournaments, but also, like you say, the grass has been slowed down a lot. And you can't win a Grand Slam by just having a cannon of a serve and winning your own service games. And to be fair, I don't want to disrespect John Isner. He's made a brilliant career out of that style of tennis. Earned a lot of money, enjoyed his career, and I think it's a very valid tactic. I'm kind of glad that he doesn't win slams and there's not more players doing it, but I don't want to disrespect John Isner in that regard. But I think that's probably why some people still hold that opinion that grass court tennis is boring, but it definitely isn't. When you see a match between, a matchup like, we had Federer and Nadal in the semi-final.
Yeah, Federer, Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. Yeah, Djokovic and Nadal 2 years ago in the semi-final was an unbelievable match. I mean, obviously, all matches between those 3 on any surface are unbelievable matches. But yeah, I don't know whether a part of that thinking comes from that Anderson Isner semi-final, but that really is an anomaly. You get that maybe once every 5-10 years, a match like that, particularly in a semi-final. It's so rare that you see that happen, and it was still something to appreciate. That maybe the tennis is not the most entertaining, but it was still, when you see that an epic match like that in terms of length, it still has a place. But yeah, you don't want to see it every year, but it doesn't happen often. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem.
One last thing on his 2020 season before we move on to a final couple of little discussion points. Of the 3 slams that was played this year, which did you enjoy the most and you think had the highest quality? And then also, aside from the obvious answer of Wimbledon, which tournament that didn't get the chance to be played have you missed the most?
Right. So in terms of the slam that I enjoyed the most, I think I would probably say the US Open, and I don't think it's, I know you said highest quality. I think highest quality would have been probably one of the other 2, but I don't know whether the US Open was because it was just after we'd had such a long break, and although there were some high quality matches, but generally you had incredible drama at the back end of it with the Team Zverev final, the Zverev Carreño Busta semi-final where he came from 2 sets to love down, and yeah, I thought it was a really entertaining tournament. So I would probably go with that in terms of which one I enjoyed the most. And in terms of quality, Australian Open was a long time ago, but I seem to remember it was pretty high quality, and the French Open was as well. And sorry, I forget the second part of
the second part of the question was completely unrelated to the first part, so it's clear why you forgot it. Just other than Wimbledon, which is the obvious answer, the other tournaments that weren't played because of the pandemic, which did you miss the most?
Okay, I probably missed. I'd probably say. Yeah, no, that's kind of two tournaments. I'm trying to pick between. I always enjoy Indian Wells and Miami, so I'd say. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably say Indian Wells side because that was, aside from the ATP Finals, that's kind of seen as another tournament which has been called the fifth Slam, one of the the biggest Masters 1000 events. It has the biggest draw. It's the first one of the year, so I think that was a big miss. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd probably agree with you on that one. To be honest, I think it's a great tournament outside the slams. I didn't even think about myself, and you haven't picked up on it there, is but I've just thought about it now, is the Olympics is going to get played next year.
Yeah, I think that, I forgot about the Olympics somehow, but yeah, that was a huge miss, and hopefully we get it next year.
Yeah. Now, I've warned you about this, but I did just want to play a quick game of just kind of quick fire answers, although if there's a discussion point, I will follow up on it. Just I'm going to run down a bunch of names. I was going to say random names, but they're not particularly random. And you just say whether you think they've got a good chance of winning a slam next year. So you don't have to stop at 4 people winning slams. Just just whether think they've got a good chance or not.
Okay.
So we'll start with Djokovic.
Yeah, I think he's got a great chance, and I'll be very surprised if he doesn't win at least one, if not 2.
Yeah. Nadal.
Yeah, again, I think Nadal is going to win the French Open, and with the way he's been playing on fast courts, I would say he's got a good chance of winning one of the other 3 as well.
Now, do you almost feel more confident in the answer of Nadal than Djokovic, even though you think Djokovic might win 2, because you do feel more solid that Nadal will win the French than you do feel that Djokovic will pick up one of the other 3?
I do, yeah. I feel if I had to say they were both only going to win one, I would feel more confident to Nadal, because I just think if Nadal's at his best on clay, I don't think anyone has an answer. Even Djokovic at his very best, team at his very best could push him, but I think whereas Djokovic at his very best now on hard course, I think there's a case Medvedev or team could certainly push him, if not win. So I'll be more confident on Nadal to win at least one. Yeah.
Roger Federer.
It's a tough one. I would say he's got a chance. With the change of course at the US Open, I think it'll actually help him as well, where he's struggled on the slower, high bouncing course that they've had there for quite a long time. Hadn't won it since 2008. I think that'll favour him. But yeah, he is still quite something of an unknown quantity, and I would say it's an outside chance for Federer to win a slam.
Do you think if he does win one, Wimbledon's his best chance?
Yeah, I still think Wimbledon's the best chance. And I would say he has about an even chance at the Australian and the US, but I'd say Wimbledon the best chance.
Yeah. Dominic Thiem, just a quick one.
Yeah, I think he's got a good chance again of winning another slam, as he did.
And then we'll do Danny Medvedev as well. I think it's going to be the same answer, isn't it?
I'd say the same with Medvedev. Good chance at one of the hardcore slams.
Now, some of the other guys that were in the finals, Tsitsipas.
I'd say a slight chance, but I'll be surprised if he did win one next year. I think he is going to win a slam in his career, definitely. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't win probably multiple slams. But I think next year might just be too early, given that he is still just a bit behind those 4 guys, and possibly Federer, if we get a strong Federer coming back as well.
Yeah. Zverev.
Zverev was a tough one, because obviously he came so close this year. And then also he had a great tournament at the Australian Open as well, reaching the semi-finals. So I would maybe have Zverev slightly ahead of Tsitsipas in that sense. But again, I would say I would be slightly surprised if Zverev won a slam next year.
Yeah. I feel, just picking up on that, I feel with Zverev, we've talked about how maybe Thiem and Medvedev are becoming more fearless of the big 3. I mean, you look at Thiem's recent record against the big 3, and it definitely backs that up. I still feel like Zverev has a choke in him a lot more in that regard. I feel like mentally he isn't as developed.
I think I would agree with you. If Zverev ran into one of the big three at their best at a slam. I wouldn't right now give him a great chance, despite what I said about his great runs at the Australian and the US Open. He didn't go through any of those guys to get there. So I would still think that one's alright.
Right. Do you think there's even the slightest chance that Diego Schwartzman wins a slam next season?
No, to be honest, and that's not to take anything away from Schwartzman or disrespect him as a player, because he's someone who's absolutely maximized his game, his talent, maximized everything out of his career. I've got a lot of respect for Schwartzman, but I don't think he's going to win a Grand Slam. I think the only slam he could win is the French Open, and at the French Open you've got Nadal. I just don't think he can beat in best of 5. So yeah, I don't think so.
Right. Does Denis Shapovalov have? I've almost butchered his name there. Have even the slightest chance of a slam next season?
I think I'll be really surprised if Shapovalov won a slam, even though he showed some great signs at the US Open, but then I felt him losing the Chronic Booster in the quarterfinals was quite a disappointing loss. And I still think, he's probably mentally and in terms of shot selection, he still has a way to go before I would consider him a real contender to win a slam.
Yeah. The man who's often flattered to deceive, he's had good runs in the past, and then he's had times without going far in the big tournaments. Grigor Dimitrov, do you think he's got the slightest chance of a slam next season?
Yeah, I'm always a bit torn on the Dimitrov one. He sort of makes you. He does something. He has a run out of nowhere at a slam where he gets to a semi-final and plays great. You think, well, he could win one even though he missed out. But I always think with Grigor that he might still have another one of those runs in him. But I always think his mind is probably going to get in the way in a big match. In terms of his level of tennis, I think he is good enough to win a slam. But no, I don't think he's going to win one.
Right. A man who divides opinion amongst tennis fans. A lot of people says he has the talent to win a slam. I don't think I agree with that. I think his game isn't quite there, although I do quite like him as a player. Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on that. I do agree that he's extremely talented, but is maybe slightly overestimated. I think he's one of the best servers in the world. He has an incredible serve. There's no question about that. But he does have limitations in terms of his return, and just given the lack of tennis he's played, and it doesn't seem like he really wants it. So I don't know how I could pick someone to win a slam when you've got still the big three around. Obviously, I was just saying, not sure about Federer. We've got now Thiem and Medvedev, and you've got guys who've just gone past Kyrgios, even like Shapovalov, Auger-Aliassime, who they're extremely talented guys, and they want it. So I don't think Kyrgios can win 7 matches in best of 5 in his physical condition.
I definitely agree with you. Right, I've just got a couple more because I am mindful this is getting quite long. Stan Wawrinka.
Yeah, Stan's a really interesting one, but I would say probably not. I'm reluctant to write Stan off because he is a champion, and I think he's still got the game, but I think he's lost a step in terms of speed, and physically he probably isn't quite the beast he was 4 or 5 years ago when he genuinely broke into and made the big 4, the big 5. But he's come close even a couple of times, getting to a couple of quarterfinals, but he just seems to physically hit a wall when he has done that. And he didn't look great after the lockdown when he came back. He had a decent tournament in Paris, but I just think Stan could still have some great moments, but I'll be surprised if he won another slam. Yeah.
And just a final one, and I know this is extremely unrealistic, but I just thought we had to throw it in there with 2 British guys on a tennis podcast. Andy Murray, Sir Andy Murray, the greatest British tennis player for a very long time, I think, ever, if you factor in the improvement, the era that he plays tennis in. Do you think he has even the slightest chance of a slam next season?
Well, I agree with you on the greatest British player ever, but yeah, unfortunately, no, I don't think he has a chance. I just think his body is not going to allow him to. Sadly, he just can't string together enough matches or tournaments to build the momentum he needs. And yeah, in terms of recovery and best of five, as we saw at the US Open, he can play it and he can still produce a magical match, a 5-set win, but it's just coming back to play the next match. I don't see how he can do that in a Grand Slam, unfortunately.
Do you think he could have some success for a few years coming in doubles, or?
Yeah, I think he could. I think he's definitely going to have. He's going to continue to have a crack at singles, but I think he could definitely have success in doubles if he focused on that and decided. Because I mean, we know he's a very good doubles player. We've seen him in Davis Cup and when he has played events in doubles. So I think, yeah.
And just one final question to wrap it all up. I know you're very clued up around the tour beyond the big guys. So is there any young players that you think could be possible breakout stars next season? We might see at a few 250s, 500s, maybe even Masters having decent runs.
Yeah, one guy I would definitely say to watch out for is Carlos Alcaraz, the young Spanish player. I believe 17-year-old has already had a lot of success on the Challenger Tour, and his rankings gone from virtually nowhere now already to knocking on the door of the top 100. And yeah, I watched him a bit at the ATP 500 in Rio earlier this year. It was very impressive. And yeah, I followed his results on the Challenger Tour. I think we could definitely see him, particularly on clay, being a factor. And obviously the other one that is more obvious is Yannick Sinner, who's already obviously had a great run at the French Open, already shown signs. I think we're going to continue to see him rise next year.
So there you have it. Keep your eyes out for Carlos Alcaraz next season. That wraps up the first ever episode of the First Serve podcast. If you've got any feedback for us, if you enjoyed it, let us know. We don't know when we'll be back, hopefully in the new season. We don't know how often this is going to be yet, but if you enjoyed it, then we might look to doing episodes reviewing more tournaments, maybe 500s, Masters, maybe just for Grand Slams. But thank you for listening, and here's to the next tennis season. Can't wait already.